Well, some thoughts are very tangible while you're in them. You know, when you're in a dream, it's total reality. You might wonder afterwards why you didn't manage to think of God at such times, or why you didn't steer the dream and realize you were dreaming, and therefore think of a good outcome and track it accordingly. But when you're in it, it just is. And really there are just thoughts. The strength of C.S. Lewis was that he somehow bridged the demonic of the Pentecostal world, where there's a battle between demons and, angels of light, and the sinful nature type understanding of, say, the Brethren type of fundamentalist. And Lewis presents an imaginative compromise. It's recognized to be a story. It's a story for children. It talks about this furious battle between good and evil, but it's a story. But it does somehow speak of the demonic fighting with the angelic, the good and the bad. And of course, it's a forum for children, for parents, to speak to their children, a way of relating, a way of meeting the need, if you like, the Rudolf Steiner understanding of the need for children to exercise imaginative things when they're very young. If they don't grasp imagination, if they don't become good at imagining, then they won't become good at hoping later on. Hoping for good and imagining the good and visualizing it. And so have something to move towards to give them hope and a desire, of course, for good. To give them hope. Simply that. There will not be hope if they don't have imagination. And the Christian family, of course, found that it didn't have the forum. Parables were not nice children's stories that somehow are all very Christian and the children will grow up to be wonderful Christians. And of course the fundamentalist had reviled against the notion that the parables were truly parables, really. The fundamentalist believes so much in the historicity and the literalism of a thing that, one might be talking about Lazarus and the rich man, Lazarus in heaven and the rich man in, Lazarus in Abraham's bosom and the rich man in torment after death in both cases, and the gulf between them. And, one's tempted to think, well, is he talking about something literal? After all, he's named them and so on. And C.S. Lewis allows a Gnostic understanding of the gospel in the sense that he's presenting a story, but at the same time it's not. It's fashioned on the eternal story as the Christian understands it, or wants to understand it. And of course it's incredibly imaginative for the kids. They enter into it. It's something you can do as a family. In other words, it fed the great need for families that wanted their kids to grow up Christian. And of course you only have to give one or two generations C.S. Lewis type background and you've got a different Christianity. So when he was first on the scene, he was suspect. The Pentecostals, of course, it's just not him at all. Too much demonic stuff in the stories. And the fundamentalists, literalists, of course, it's a story. We don't hold with fiction. We want the true Bible stuff. And the fundamentalists couldn't somehow accept any change to what they thought was fundamental to their religion, as it has been, as it's written, as it is in the Gospels and so forth. He was definitely rejected by Christian circles, and now he's not. And it's probably because his generation of children have grown up. And he's fine now, most acceptable. But he's a very academic chap. And fundamentalists of both extremes, the Pentecostal and the very un-Pentecostal, couldn't accept him. But the charismatics, who basically were caught between the two, well, they tended to be families. They had kids to worry about, and they needed something that was going to speak to the kids. And my goodness, C.S. Lewis's children's stories do that. But not just that. You think of something like Screwtape Letters. Wow, you could be a totally new Christian and it's like reading Pilgrim's Progress used to be for people. It was just giving an analysis of what's going on in a very pictorial form. You didn't really think that Satan was writing to his assistant, Screwtape, advising him accordingly. But it just, it was so real in what what I would call the Gnostic understanding is behind the whole spirituality of Christianity. You could get it. You could realize that what C.S. Lewis was talking about was spiritually absolutely real, even though it was given in this pretend play between Satan and his assistant and so forth. Quite wonderful. Yes. But interesting that from the Steiner point of view, it's met the need for children to exercise their imagination, even though they're Christian, and now in an acceptable way to the Christian religion in general. Quite something. C.S. Lewis. It's interesting when you think of the chaps that significant to children. Steiner. He was defamed, but Baden-Powell, Scout Group, setting up. Dedication of C.S. Lewis to what he's doing. Did. Bernardo was another one, wasn't it? Phenomenal chap. His name escapes me at the minute. The chap who wrote Gulliver's Travels. Wow. What a social reformer. 150 years before his time, easily. Steiner, 100 years before his time as regards education, easily. C.S. Lewis, mastered Gnosticism in a world that was not going to accept it. You're forced with C.S. Lewis to know you're in fiction, but still see the truths. Thank you, Heavenly Father.